Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 175th Spiritual Brainstorm. In this short episode, I'd like to discuss two things. The first one is looking back at my work and the way that I view reality. It's clear that I'm looking at it from the perspective of an ideal kind of template. So, it's just like in biology with the work of Michael Levin, there's this idea of attractors that are like an end state that various organs are trying to reach in the developmental stages of like an organism, like a baby. As if like that there is a fully functioning liver or heart or something that is like a functional template that exists somewhere in the future that attracts the cells to try to match that template. And the reason why they call it an attractor is it's kind of like, the force of gravity or electromagnetism, something like, there's like this sinkhole where at the bottom of it there is an end state that you're trying to reach and that you're pulled towards. And I think that when I look at my videos, it seems that that's what I'm trying to extract. That's the kind of information I'm trying to tap into is what would be the ideal end state, or what is the attractor for humanity as a collective global organism, and looking at the formation of various systems, be it the metaverse, AI, finance, all of it. Comparing these to various organs that should function ideally in a certain manner, and then there's an attractor that tries to pull us to that point. The shortcoming, though, is if you've been listening to all the predictions of various spiritual teachers and people out there, many are predicting World War III. Others are saying there's going to be major crises and all kinds of other things. An attractor is not something that is actually reached most of the time. Like there's this attempt at reaching it, but it's never 100%, right? So just because there are so many things that can happen during the formation phase of organisms, and they can knock these developing organs off course, and so ultimately they will never fully achieve the attractor. And so I guess that's one of the shortcomings of my worldview, is that I decided to talk about the attractor and not about the likely state that humanity is going to end up in, because of all of the beliefs and limitations and all kinds of other things that it puts it its own way. So I don't know if World War III is going to break out or if there's going to be a financial system collapse. The idea is, I know I'm trying to find out what the end state is supposed to be, and then the experience that we're having is just it's kind of custom built, based on the roadblocks and kind of things that are in the way, so it's as if you are you have this pebble that is falling or into a sinkhole made of sand or whatever. So first of all, there's friction obviously involved, and then if that pinball or something isn't round and is now squared or is deformed in a way, then it's not going to fall in this nice spiraling motion downwards. It may stall somewhere, it may be veer off course. And so that's kind of like humanity, the way that we are as an organism, and all of the different beliefs that people have, and the thoughts, the actions that are not necessarily aligned with our highest kind of potential. And so, it's nice to tap into the ultimate potential of something, like for instance for humanity, because it gives you heart and gives you confidence. But like, imagine if you're a clairvoyant and you tap into the highest potential of an individual, but you don't look at the state that the individual is in at the present moment. So for instance, you could sort of have this connect to someone and saying, wow, I see that you can be a tremendous marathon runner. That is basically your highest potential, given how you've incarnated. And then the guy looks at you and he's in a wheelchair and he's lost both of his legs, and you're like, hey, I'm just tapping into your highest potential. I just, that's it. You know, I don't really look at where you're starting from or where you are now, or, you know, whether that highest potential is still attainable. And so I guess it's just my idealist nature. That's who I am. But then it can be a bit frustrating because I'm always trying to say, you know, what the ideal state of things should be. And then if you look at reality, you're like, well, yeah, but look how shitty it is and look how crappy it is and all that stuff. And obviously that's also applicable to the micro level. So, you know, and it's the same for my life, you know, so there's these highest potentials for my life, and there's still so many blockages and psychic and traumas and all kinds of things that are getting in the way of me making decisions that would actually steer me towards those highest potential or timelines or whatever you want to call them, and reaching my highest potential state. And so, yeah, I mean, on the other hand, it's important to have a destination and to understand where you're going, because otherwise, if you're like a captain without a destination, then your ship is sure not to arrive. So, you know, I'm kind of torn on this one. You know, whether I should also engage in like the timeline reading and probabilities of, you know, where humanity will be in like 10 years based on current whatever, or if I should just stick to what I'm good at, what I think I'm good at least, is identifying these kind of attractors and just, you know, going for it. So that's the first topic I want to talk about. The second topic is just complementing some of the insights I had about the mystery of life, basically. And if you've been following this channel, you know that for me, life is basically conscious living, you know, water or liquid, actually, not even water, because water is a specific kind of liquid, but liquid light. And then what I had is this kind of crazy insight that, how should I say this? So I always say that life is at the center between nothingness and infinity. And so imagine that you draw, like you have, imagine a sphere that is as big as the universe. And that sphere is made up of liquid. And in the middle of that sphere, you create a kind of artificial boundary made up of consciousness, where consciousness considers that what is outside of that boundary is its external reality, and what is inside that boundary is its inner reality. But the distance in terms of scale between its boundary and the outer boundary of that infinite, well, that sphere that is the size of the universe, and the boundary and the smallest unit of Planck inside, which is like the middle of that smaller sphere inside the bigger sphere, are of equivalent magnitudes. So let's say that, you know, the surface of the boundary is 0, and then going towards infinity, it stops at 10 to the 33, you know, like in terms of scale, and going inwards towards the center of that sphere, it's 10 to the minus 33, which is like, or 34, which is like the Planck scale. And so that boundary sits kind of in the middle between, symbolically speaking, infinity and nothingness. And then imagine any kind of reverberation on its surface. Imagine that any kind of thought that it has goes outward into the universe and inward simultaneously. So there's this action and counteraction, because obviously when you create a motion, you have to create a counter motion. And that motion goes out into the universe and then reverberates back into towards that, you know, sphere of, you know, liquid light, let's say. And it does the same going inwards. That means it goes all the way down to like its center towards nothingness, and then it reverberates back up towards its surface and its boundary. And then it meets there at the center. And normally, that reverberation should be exactly the same reverberation, you know, going outward into the universe and coming back towards the boundary of that, you know, sphere of liquid light, and also going inwards into its center and then, coming back out, up and tapping against the surface. But then imagine that it got distorted on its way going, forward, and it also got distorted going towards the center for some reason, which is what life does. Its essence, to me, is that it has the capability of distorting, in a way, this mechanism of, this motion, or this wave-like motion that goes out into the universe and into its own being. But what's interesting is that the state of the bigger sphere, to me, maps perfectly on the surface of the smaller sphere. And the inner state of the sphere also maps perfectly on the boundary of the smaller sphere. So, imagine this perfectly reflective, the sphere made of perfectly reflexive material. That means it reflects light perfectly. And it sits in the center of the universe, but in the universe where there are no planets yet, no physical matter or obstacles for light. The entire universe reflects, its state reflects on the surface of that sphere, is reflected there. And the inside of that sphere is also perfectly reflected on the inner layer, let's say, of that sphere. And so the inside and the outside here are kind of, one, especially if the surface is not just reflexive material. It's like this, it's almost like an ocean within an ocean, if you know what I mean. Like a droplet that created an artificial boundary in the middle of an ocean, which is spherical. And whatever the motions of the ocean, it superimprints on the boundary, the artificial boundary around the droplet. And so the droplet maps the state of the entire ocean inside of itself. And at that point, the distinction between inner information of what's inside the droplet and the outer information of the state of the ocean are one. Now you could say there's a loss of information, but here I would say that life is, and the initial kind of, the reason why life sits at the middle between nothingness and infinity is that that's the whole point, is that information 10 to the 33 can be encoded from 0 to 10 to the minus 33, no problem, because so in that sense, those are a mirror of each other. And so, it got me thinking about like this inside outside kind of paradox and enigma again, that ultimately when you're manipulating the outside reality, you're simultaneously manipulating your inner reality. And when you're manipulating your inner reality, you're simultaneously manipulating your outer reality. And it's just that it's as if that sort of conscious sphere of liquid light decided to use the external reality, or focus on an external reality, to modulate its inner state rather than doing the reverse. And that's just a choice, because those two are just mirrors of each other. So there's no better way of manipulating or changing the state of the universe. But that boundary is absolutely key in magic. And, at our level, it manifests as the boundary of our skin, and the difference between what we perceive as our inner reality and outer reality, which are obviously mirrors of each other, because any outer event maps onto your inner reality. But we have a much harder time seeing how our inner reality maps on the outer reality. But according to what I'm saying here, there's no reason why it shouldn't, obviously. The only reason why it shouldn't is that there's this distortion effect where you are sending a reverberation into, the outer reality by your actions. But it gets jumbled and distorted. And so when you have a feedback, you just can't make the link between what has been transformed going inwards and what has been transformed going outwards, and make that connection, you know? Now, obviously, make the connection when, for instance, you hit your pinky, or you stub your pinky on a tree, or on a branch or whatever. You can see like the link between the pain that you feel inside and the outer reality. That's obvious. But there are many other things that are not necessarily obvious, especially when you have certain intentions, like you want to do something in the world, you want to, I don't know, you want to be, you want to create world peace, or you want to get a new job or something. And, you know, you send out these impulses, this reverberation in the external reality, and they get jumbled. And then it also changes your inner state of being, and that gets jumbled. And then when the moment where you sort of reap the result of your initial impulse and intention is the moment where, you know, those, like I was saying, this outward going you know, impulse and this inner going impulse, you know, goes all the way down and then comes all the way back up, and then go, you know, the same for outside. It goes all the way to the extreme end of the universe, let's say, and then comes back to you in a dimension that isn't bound by, you know, space-time and the limits of the speed of light or any of that. But the moment where those two meet on the, you know, the surface of your skin, you could say, is the moment where you have the result, or you reap the fruits or the benefits, or the ultimate outcome of the initial impulse and intention. And it's really hard to align those two and to become aware of how those two are even correlated. Well, the first thing is because as humans, we emit so many things into the outer reality as vibrations, that when they come back, it's kind of like the same as someone that's splashing around in the middle of a pool, and then in a circular pool, and then, you know, there's so many waves that are going to hit to the extreme of the pool and then come back to the human, that you just can't, it's very difficult to sort of untangle what action exactly led to what outcome. It's just like, and so, yeah, I mean, it's this realization is also about, you know, trying to manifest differently from the inside out rather than the outside in, which is totally bizarre and difficult. But I'll be trying, and maybe I'll do some videos and share if I had any success. And also this approach to minimalism, which I have a very difficulty with, because I'm doing a million things at a time, and I also have like a million thoughts and intentions and plenty of things, and everything is stirring and everything. So if you can't focus, then you can't untangle what you receive. And, you know, it's almost like, imagine if you've jumbled up all the different seeds that exist in the world as far as fruits and vegetables, and then you spray them like randomly on a field, and then you reap them at the same time, and you make a big, you know, mush out of it, and then you eat it, and then you're like, what the hell is this, you know? Because you can't even taste the different ingredients. You don't even know what's in there. And that's kind of, you know, the reason I'm talking about this is because this is kind of how I live my life right now, doing a million things, and, you know, just having a hard time untangling everything that's happening to me. So yeah, the practice of minimalism, and maybe, you know, not, well, being a creator, that's what we're meant to be, but maybe not a chaotic, you know, crazy creator, you know, kind of like this kid that plays with 5 toys simultaneously and dumps everything on the floor, and then it's just chaos. And then there's no structure to it, and no joy or pleasure, because it's all jumbled. That's kind of my life. So, you know, I'm doing a million things, working on plenty of different things at the same time. So yeah, I hope you're doing well. Happy New Year, by the way. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, the usual. And I'll talk to you in the next video. Don't hesitate to leave a comment. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. Bye, guys.